Alright, today we're going to learn about how to subtract fractions with a whole number. So if we have a fraction such as 5 and 1/5 minus 2 and 2/10, we are going to need to find a common bottom number, a common denominator for 5 and 10. So what number can 5 fit into that 10 can also fit into? Well, we all should know this, pretty basic. We're going to ignore the whole numbers and just look at 1/5 minus 2/10. And we see that 5 and 10 both fit into 10. So now we're going to find a common recipe card. So we're going to put 5 minus 2 up here. We're just going to hold it. We call it our little penalty box, and we'll remind ourselves of it later. Now we're going to multiply by a number 2 in order to get 5 to become 10. And then we have 2. So now we have 2/10 minus 2/10, which is going to be 0. And then we have 5 minus 2. So the answer is going to be 3. Alright, let's try another fraction. Alright, now that we've reviewed how to subtract a fraction where you do not have to regroup, now we're going to try a fraction where you will need to regroup. So for example, in this one, 6 and 1/4 minus 2 and 3/4. Okay, this looks like your basic fraction problem, which it is, and in a minute you will see how to easily be able to solve this. So as we always say, we see a whole number and a fraction. You just ignore the whole numbers. So you take a look at 1/4 minus 3/4. Do we see that? The bottom numbers are the same. Yes, that's easy. So now what we're going to do is just subtract the 1 and the 3. 1 minus 3, as we know in 5th grade, is not 2. I can't have $1 and give you $3. It just doesn't work. So we're going to need to borrow from the whole number. So if we borrow from 6, 6 is no longer 6. It becomes 5. And if we borrow, then obviously 1/4 is no longer 1/4. That also becomes a bigger fraction. So I took 1 pie and brought it over to the fraction. Now, instead of having 1 slice out of 4, I'm going to have a whole pie. What I'm going to do is add 1 plus 4. All you need to do when borrowing, all you need to do is add these two numbers together. So when borrowing, add 1 and 4 together to give you 5 and 5/4. That's my new fraction, minus 2 and 3/4, which gives me 3 and 2/4. Don't forget, don't fall into multiple choice A syndrome, where you see 3 and 2/4 and thinks that's the final answer. Remember, we need to simplify. So 3 and 2/4 divided by 2 equals 3 and 1/2. Okay, so let's do one more problem where we need to just practice how to borrow into fractions. Okay, so let's say I'm subtracting 8 and 3/5. Okay, so I have 8 whole pizza pies, and then I have 3 slices out of 5. If I need to borrow, 8 becomes 7. 3 no longer is 3. It's going to be a bigger number. What's the bigger number? Well, I'm going to add these two numbers together. So 3 and 5. So my new fraction is 7 and 8/5. Let's try another one. If I were to borrow 6 and 1/7, 6 no longer becomes 6. It becomes 5, exactly. And then 1 no longer is 1. I'm going to add 1 plus 7 to give me 7/7. So my new fraction is 5 and 7/7. Okay? If that does not make sense, then I want you to review this lesson, go back to the beginning of the video, and listen to how we regroup, because you will need to know how to regroup for the rest of this lesson. Okay? Now we're going to practice doing 3 problems together, and then tomorrow, or at the end of this lesson, you're going to write a flipping exit card and bring that into class tomorrow as your entrance ticket. Alright, my next problem is 7 and 1/3 minus 2 and 2/3. So here we are again, ignore the whole numbers, and we're just looking at 1/3 minus 2/3. Easy, because the bottom numbers are the same. But in 5th grade, I know that 1 minus 2 doesn't work. So I'm going to need to borrow from my whole number. Think back about 20 seconds ago how we learned how to borrow. So 7 is no longer 7. If I'm borrowing 1 whole pi from 7, this becomes 6. And then when I borrow it, the 1 I'm going to add to 3. So 1 plus 3. So my new fraction is 6 and 4/3 minus 2 and 2/3. Now this is a problem that we can solve. Bottom numbers are the same, check. 4 can minus 2, check. 6 minus 2, good. So the answer is 6 minus 2 is 4. 4 minus 2 is 2/3. Now let me just take 10 seconds to explain why I'm adding 3. Because I know that 7 and 1/3 means I have 7 whole pies, and my last pie is cut into thirds, and I have 1 slice. So all of the pies that I'm borrowing are cut into 3 slices. So when I borrow a pie and I give it to this fraction section, I'm getting 3 slices. So that's why I'm adding 3. If that didn't make sense, then review that part again. So that was our first practice problem. Let's try a second practice problem. We have 4 and 3/8 minus 3 and 7/8. Okay? Same thing again, bottom numbers are the same. This is super easy. So all we need to do is ignore our whole numbers for now. We see the bottom numbers are the same, but in 5th grade we know 3 minus 7 doesn't work. So I'm going to borrow from my 4 whole pies. So instead of 4, it becomes 3. And when I take it over to my fractions, my pie is split up into how many slices? 8. The bottom number tells me how many slices I have. So that's why I'm going to do 3 plus 8. So my new fraction is 3 and 3 plus 8 is 11/8 minus 3 and 7/8. Now that's a problem that we can definitely solve. Bottom numbers are the same, top numbers can subtract. 3 minus 3 is nothing, is 0. And 11 minus 7 is 4/8. So don't fall into multiple choice A syndrome and say, oh, 4/8 is the answer. 4/8 we need to simplify to become 1/2. And that is your final answer. If there was any part of this video that you still want to review a little bit more because you weren't sure about it, then go back and revisit the video. Listen to it until you truly understand it. For your exit card, I want you to solve these problems. 5 and 2/9 minus 4 and 6/9. So go ahead and subtract that. Bottom numbers are the same, so this is an easy exit card number. The second one, you will need to find a common bottom number, such as 8 and 4/10 minus 2 and 3/5. So the bottom numbers are not the same, but we know you're just going to ignore the whole numbers, find the number, this should be so easy at this point, that it goes into, and then remember how we borrow. If you don't remember how to borrow, then review the lesson again and make sure you do understand it, because we are going to start with board work first thing tomorrow when we get into class. So make sure you have your exit ticket, show me your work. If you don't show the work, then I'm going to have you do it again. So make sure you write down how you solved it, whether you borrowed, you used a recipe card, and then bring in these 2 problems tomorrow for class. Okay? Great. See you tomorrow.